Okay. Facebook Live, YouTube is following. Let's see. Okay, so yesterday's stream was about creating gradients with shader. Um, we had some success with breakpoints, but then when we tried to merge two gradient images with 25% and 75% breakpoints, we did not have luck. So I did some other work in between time we concluded the session and basically to simulate cases. So essentially we are trying to merge the top one, middle one, so we could get the bottom one. But that proved to be so difficult to make for some unknown reason. I look for different ways of that we are now seeing at the bottom. It's actually surprisingly simple. It's something that I forgot to investigate yesterday. I'll clean up the code after the smooth step. So what it does, according to the official documentation, now I think smooth step, although we are using it in shader code, I found its explanation in say normal document. So the smooth step functions have two signatures here. These are part of the built-in functions. So this is going to do something in shader, but the explanation is not given in the shader part of the document. Instead, I found the explanation in normal GD script part of the documentation. So I know you guys are fixing, Godot guys are fixing documentation. This part could use some help. This is the most explanatory part because I have an engineer. This function is doing essentially, but this explanation it doesn't read English. Sorry, there's some from to logic. Uh, it's not self-explanatory. If anything, this is confusing more. But if you know what it's doing underneath, this part is actually the part. The reason being, when you look at the example cases here, so you have from 2 and then s. So from 0 to 2 minus 5. So it's really hard to interpret the tension of this function. Like I said, this explanation doesn't give you much, but you look at the different examples here, like from is still 0, 2 is 2. Same thing is for the last example. This is the interesting part. The s part is either 1 or 2. And you might think, looking at the returns, well, does it divide 1 into 2 pieces? Because this is like 2 steps. And here you get 1 because again it's 2 steps. Is it halving it? Like how many steps do you take from 0 to 2? Sorry, it's kind of open to interpretation. It doesn't make much sense. The examples are either unfortunately chosen or intentionally chosen to make some sense, but it's confusing. This part is even more confusing. You think you get a hang of what's going on in the last two. This is really confusing. And when you read this part, it actually makes perfect. Now, if you plug in 0, 2, 0.5 into this equation, is 3 times y squared minus 2 times y cube. And if you replace y with x minus from over 2 minus from, plug it in, yes, this is actually going to give you this. Makes perfect sense according to this equation. But if you look at this, read this, you have no idea you're supposed to get this. That's the either way. I think what you need to really know are context, right? This is something what we want to do. We want to interpolate the value of s between from value and a to value. So essentially, this is actually going to go from certain value to another value, and this s part is anyway. This is doing similar to what I think lerp does. The name makes sense. It's sort of like taking smoother steps. This is what we actually used here. So essentially, looking at a numerical case like this is one thing. You make some sense, but then how does this actually work in shader context? Now we said yesterday that we want to have red color or color one at the beginning, that we should transition to a different color until we hit the 25% of, and then let's actually stop right there. This part is doing 0% to percent. Breakpoint one is 25. And the stepping is basically, this is what's kind of, you may think these are the steps that you take to go from 0 to breakpoint. It doesn't work like that. Because, well, it kind of does and it doesn't. That's the weird explanation here. But essentially, what we know, the way what we know about the way shaders work, especially with the UV x and UV y coordinates, that essentially everything here, it's as if it's wrapped in a for loop. That your x's are going from 0, 0 to 1, 1. Sorry, from 0 to 1. It's as if there's a for loop that is actually incrementing the value of UV. So these values are changing here. Therefore, at each step of the hidden for loop, this is actually giving you a different result. A result that you want to only run between these 2 points. So that's really what this does. This mix part is really the extra flavor here. This is actually doing most of the job. The value of smooth step is now telling how much you want to mix color 1 and color 2. This mix is and how much you want to mix is basically the code that we wrote yesterday here. This is, assume this is the code that you write in a similar way that you write. However, this actually only works for the first breakpoint, but the second breakpoint doesn't really give you accurate results, because I think this is still doing it in a linear way, not a smooth step way, hence the difference. But essentially, a quick recap here. As the UVX increasing, we are taking less and less of color 1. As UVX also increasing on the second half of this equation, we are taking more of color 2. Then this part is growing, this part is, so the shrinking part is contributing, of course, less to color 1, but then the increase more to color 2. Hence this, you have less and less red and more green, and then you 5% more. This is what the, so you just can do that with just one line of code like this. So once you do the first breakpoint, now of course you have to do the, well, our task is to create something like, so it's like transition from color 1 to color 2, and then go with color 2 until you hit a different breakpoint, and then revert the color again to the. So the middle part is this line, which is essentially taking breakpoint 1 as the start point. I'm going to start right here. And now we do 1 minus breakpoint 1, which is basically considering this as 1 and then minus breakpoint. So essentially in between these two areas, uh, you need to mix, another color. And for sure, we want to show the second color here. So this is going to be the second color. And what should you mix it with? Well, maybe the color that you actually got from the first calculations. When your color values are coming right here, you're basically mixing that the rest of the green. That's why you have a smooth transition here. I believe this will look. Let's try color 2 to color 2 and then see what it does. Yeah. So when you do color 2 with color 2, I mean, maybe this is actually giving something meaningful, but then we are kind of using this here and then we do something else, so it doesn't make much sense. Uh, Either way, I think you are getting it. Logically, we are continuing the color, uh, the painting of the pixels that start with color 1, change to color 2 along this just smooth stepped. And from here, whatever color value you had, now keep mixing it with color 2 still, smooth step until this 75% point. Then use that color in the last calculation, but this time you are transitioning color 1, which is, and you do that from the 75% to, and finally whatever color you have is the color of the output channel is the color. So everything we have here so far is basically garbage. That's really what it is. It's kind of sad, and because there's always, um, I mean, the tendency is that, well, he says if you feel like you have to write more code to have a handle on it, but then as often you see in most shaders, shader code looks so simple, it does the job, and then there are usually no for loops, no if blocks, nothing like that. This is like that. It's so simple now. How does it do the job? It's like, well, it took this long to basically interpret. Now, because we have only one breakpoint, there is no longer a need for breakpoint 2. This will go as well. I think we could call this a different value because because we are building this for the threshold component, we want to have an equal placement on from both sides. So whatever that 25% will be going to be off the edges. So this is basically, maybe this should actually be called offset. Um, then we just plug it in, offset, fine. Now let's reset 0. So when you do this, that's what it is. Do 50%. See, that's the thing. This should probably be max 50. Now, I actually want to discuss something else. Maybe we can still make a few. When we did the linear code, the linear gradient I think this is one case. This is one. Um, that was actually kind of like a linear interpolation. The way it's interpolated now is this. Maybe I'll actually find a tool that visualizes this. Will maybe, but either way, it's a smoother transition. Difference between the bottom one that we just did versus this second row. The second row is the linear interpolation. Now it actually looks good enough, but um, funnily enough, when I look at the Figma design, sky, so I actually took screenshots of this, all this, and compare them. Although to my eye, the middle one seemed like the most correct gradient, essentially, most applications interpret the gradient with stop points where it's already done at the bottom. So I guess they are internally using smooth step or a similar interpolation function. Um, because as soon as I was done with this, I thought, well, it still doesn't look quite like the one that I see just above here. It's as if this is 25, but it should be sort of like this. This is a little bit closer to the top one, so it's like another 1 or 2% edit this. Then I thought, okay, that's really a lost cause and it doesn't really compare what we are seeing here. So my final decision is to leave it as it is. This is good enough. When you don't have the two other to compare to, it's not going to make any. So this is good. One thing we should definitely do is limit this to maybe 0.5. Then when this is maxed out. But I think you really now understand what I meant by adding a few more percentage values here, because psychologically, when this is at midpoint, should you now see a harsh transition here? Maybe, but then maybe you shouldn't, because this is just a breakpoint. It's still supposed to transition from red to green while it's actually doing that. And it stops doing that when it hits. So this is how it's supposed to work, but I guess I had a different experience. Actually fine, you know. First, when you have only 6%, so little room here that the transition will be harsh, but that's not really our. So I'm gonna call this a victory. I think I'll move on, tidy up, and we have still the rounded corner border color issue. Uh, yeah, that's really it. Think of the next step. That took me roughly 15 minutes to explain. Took me hours to figure out. So one more thing before we move forward. I had the basic transition code, just the UVX 1 minus UVX. how much color one contributes, how much color sort of thing. I deleted that line here. So we are writing this only for this shader. There's going to be another part of this component part, that is this simple shader that I just actually delete. We could actually write that it's a simple shader, but we may also write that with this new that is just going to be from 0 to 1 over UVX, just color 1 and 2. Maybe that will actually give a better smoother gradient anyway. Either way, it is now time to consider the rest of this component. Now, let's see. The way the slider works, because I'm trying to stylize the each slider component. Track looks more like this. Actually, have done something. This is the custom gradient that we use slider. But instead of using a simple gradient texture, well, we could still. It's the code we wrote here. It's actually changed. Now the component has become sort of bottom safety zone. Instead, this part. So I'm just trying to separate or group pieces of the slider so that I can put the shader in the right place. Where to go from here? Because I think whatever I do, it's border my problem right now. Because I'm still not sure how this grabber is going to render over or under the. Let's actually try this. First of all, is that color that the shader? Oh, it's all done. Well, actually saved it. I will probably save this shader as shader because it's actually in the system. In fact, I should just take this as a take this. I'll call this. And this shader is going to save shaders. Um, Actually, now is our chance to try that transition with just the start and end. It's out. So this is what we did yesterday for the simple color 1 to color 2. In light of what we just learned, we actually do it this way. so that you smooth step 0. Does this give you? See, this actually gives, like I said, a little bit different result. The interpolation is different. Look at the difference. I'm gonna comment this out. Means the original simple gradient will kick in. There is the difference. This part gets more light green parts when I smooth stuff. Do it again. Lighter. And there goes the Twitch spammer. Hi. So let's actually look at the red part. Is there any difference here? Yeah, we are also losing some of the vibrant red colors. I always thought about that this was sort of not as bright as this. Yeah, because this is the linear interpolation and this is this kind of smoother transition. Bye bye. We may still use this for a different case. I'll just keep it there. Enable the color. Okay. Now let's try that panel trick. What if this threshold was stuck in a panel? Reparent to new node. Well, we have to go and change this part. Age position off. Let's give this a style. Just need the line. But when you do the line, it's just border. For that, we flat. Parent background. Then the border, some stuff. Radius will be 2. Border color will be green. This is what we will use most likely, but this actually does. Let's force this. You can actually see the border, but the content is flipping over. Now is our chance to do this. Sort of. 8. It's fine. Zoom in a bit more. It's actually rendering that right on the edge. Smoother, sharper. Margin is work. We could actually temporarily do this. But when you clip it, of course, you're also. It's not gonna do. Yeah, this guy is that's a whole other story. May have to change some of those sizing. Back to the panel. The reason why I'm doing this work, right? I'm afraid of having still perfect here and there. I think here we can get away with this. We'll also have a line in between this part and this panel here rendering over or under. It's also cutting off the top of the grabber. Grabber will be pushed outwards anyway. Because here's the catch. The panel is essentially what we see here as the black bordered rectangle shape. Inside we will have two pieces. One is H slider, maybe three pieces. Divider as a single color. And the shader that we just wrote. Now the slider is going to be styled so that it actually has a gradient. So far we've done that. That's good. But its handle is going to creep out of the panel although this arrow and this bar, they are part of the slider component, which is this blue to red. It's essentially usually partially part of the panel, partially outside the panel. That's the problem. So we are trying to render some of its contents outside, which I think I did at some point. The situation was simple, but I think it still involved panels. It had something to do with this area, except I think it also had a texture. Because the problem is with the texture style box, you don't have the border option. That is always the problem. With this, you don't have some of the other things that hence life goes on. How can we render? View the clip content here, whatever. Because what is there to clip? What if instead of forcing this to 150, uh, do you have anything to do? Of course you do. For texture rect, size should be. We may even constrain the box and then not even manually. That's not our concern. This is still occupying, this panel is occupying what? How much space? 150. Then this is occupying. I need this to be as much as possible. I don't want to manually resize. I want things to fit by changing some values here. Let's cover this. Six. I don't quite get this gap. This I get. It's 0. Oh, this is the component. This actually there is no gap. It considers, yeah, this grabber part of the component because it has spacing there. I think there is actually some fake space in the V bar. It's actually part of this. There's a transparent part of the slide, just like here. Accommodate for this shape. So the panel investigation is going to be difficult. I guess my final suggestion will be this. Slider, see it's selected. It accepts different types of texture. I am suggesting we write which texture such that image textures shader does the job that the image texture looks like this. What am I doing now? Good question. um, I'm trying to work out a component, a threshold component uh, that is going to tell us if the value for a particular thing is within limits. Had the we had one version like this last week, this week, which had sort of minimum and maximum points, but then the placement and the color of these triangles was kind of weird. It was option. It indicates danger or safe zones, like depending on the color. Too high, too low, depending on whether you burst them. It didn't make much sense. So we switched the logic to this. Anywhere in the green zone, if this marker is there, it's happy. If we are in the red zones, then so we turn this component into this component, and this is what I'm trying to implement in Godot. I'm writing custom shader to do the graphical parts, but deep down it is actually using H slider. This is the just import regular H slider. So we are trying to make this guy look that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to cut corners if possible by taking advantage of panel and then changing the border color and such, but it has other problems of objects sort of not quite fitting in itself. In the panel with the rounded stuff, there are some cutoff points. So we'll write more custom shader, I guess. Let's take this outside again. Let's get oh, let's code. So this slider is right place. Because you don't really. Oh yeah. Um. Yeah. Well, see, some things only they kind of worked in combination actually. Although some of the where are this style box texture doesn't have the border color. Flat one does, but then it doesn't come with textures or other. Like, doesn't accept gradient background. It's flat background. Texture has the gradient background. Doesn't have border. So basically, I'm pretty much writing a case that actually has best of both. Yeah, that actually is going to be another thing. I think we'll do tinting too, because these guys also have unique colors. See, that's another thing. You actually brought up an important point. Because for its handle, oh, this is okay. Let's see the thing. There. This grabber part for the slide. I actually intentionally imported a white one. I could tint it. It is not possible. So you could just load a simple texture, but it doesn't give you a modulation color modulation choice. Like you actually, it is possible in other cases, but this is going to modulate the whole component, not this part. It's as if this option should also be enabled for custom. So most likely we will also write custom shader that will accept this graphic plus we'll do the tinting the color we want. My goal is this: create a component such that it accepts icon, it accepts gradient colors, it accepts values for its low and high points and its existing value. We already have a working condition here, like say your high threshold is 80, uh, your value is 30. This thing is actually fluctuating in between. At least it was until this. Need to restart the. See 40. Probably change something. Didn't and value is changed. That value. This is actually pairing. That's good. Look at the slider. 1050. This is wrong. Make this 40 again. Okay, I think it's working. Okay. See, when your threshold is going higher and higher, means you have a longer way to get to the danger zones. That's the interpretation. This is going up. Okay, this is working. Why was it not working? So let's actually pick a mid value. Let's say between 20 and 160, the mid value is going to be what, 90? 90 is right in the middle. Have an equal amount of way to go to get out of bounds. as you approach the danger zone, you're right sort of at the threshold. Maybe we'll change the interpolation here and there because you're at the high threshold. Maybe this is where you should start seeing the red colors more often. We'll figure that out. So let's make this look more like this guy. Let's create an image texture. I might have started something for that. Out of frustration, I might have called it some scene name. What would I have called it out of frustration? Knowing myself and my naming convention. Probably is something someone's mother. Rounded gradient. So this is gradient text source. We know gradient texture is not enough by itself. This even has a script, which is basically saying what is happening. I think we need to create a new resource. Let's call image. Well, let's make an image text because it's going to be part of default theme. Is it call it what? Let's call it for now horizontal threshold. Slider, because it's the slider part of the each slider. It's a resource. Image texture. I think this is the part where an image texture needs. I was hoping this image could actually accept a shader. This didn't work. Need to load an image. This image actually has to be of type image. Sentence may not have made any sense, but I'll show you what I mean. When you have a PNG file, its data type is set to texture. You could also set it to image. Then internally, it is considered as a data file. This is the visual part. This is the data part. That's my interpretation. So when it says load an image, so you have a lot of image files in UI. I believe it was not accepting this. This one, it's going to say that resource basically doesn't match the provide an image, not texture data type. So whatever it is, you have to convert it to image. Except in our case, we really don't want to use any of these. All we need is just a base. Because we are going to overwrite all the colors anyway, in one by one, white area is more. Go to our good old friend fireworks. Let's create a one by one pixel. Most beautiful one by one white pixel ever. PNG is fine, sure. Doesn't have transparency. 8. Two colors, 102. This PC. Let's call this 1 by 1. Right. That's that. 1 by 1 now. Image, there's no properties, it's just living in its own. Where is our source? Let's assign 1 by 1 to. Let's expand this. And this is where we are stuck. How can we write shader? Something that doesn't accept shader. Problem. Go back to our slider. There are tiles, slider. Definitely not empty. Definitely not line. Flat is flat. I was hoping this texture, which is this is what we are trying to do. Which one of these can accept a shader? So we can actually do this. It's a shame. Viewport texture. Okay. Let's be silly. Create another resource. OpenGL ESX. Sure. I can't remember looking this up. And let's see. So it's practically useless. Dead for us. Atlas textures for spreadsheets. Drops out one portrait such as that. Camera texture provided by the curve is this is maybe something I'll be using in the future for some tool development. This is useless in the sense that it only defines a gradient, but this is a dead end. Um, sure, but not well. Use a mesh to draw itself. Not really. Know what that's about. Proxy texture. I think this is the kind of texture that you load from, yeah, as the name suggests. Not quite sure what it's used for, but the name proxy suggests something that the fact that you are able to use as base a different type of texture is basically this. It's like you are using any one of these, but you are casting. You kind of don't know the nature yet. Maybe you kind of use it as a proxy texture. Kind of fits in a place, but then its base could be any one of these. It's useful in some advanced cases. Not now. Stream texture is kind of looked into this. This is when you read from the file system, or like you. It's that's what that image. Let's just do it. You load it from the path. That's actually what's. Just need to bind shader. However, it's just the last resource. This one. For path, you have to assign a viewport container so that it should something. It's not useful. However, something else comes to my mind. Let's create our image texture anyway. That still seems to be the best candidate. Horizontal threshold slider. Overwrite it. Yes, sure. This is it. Let's even load an image file. It's fine. Can we write a script that reads the shader from the file system? Makes this image look like our shader. Then we use this image texture as the texture for the style box texture of the slider. So we cheated. Let's make this add so that when we are done with our work, don't get caught up in this one by one silliness if we forget. I believe there was that someone's mother, yeah, some script. This actually has an internal script. This will have its own internal script too. GD script. Plugin script. Script. Okay. This script we are writing here is part of I am let's make you a tool for now so we can hope to see you here. Let's look at the texture, which is threshold. Shit, didn't I save it? Threshold slider. Yeah, you are that. Why are you empty? You are this. Something is looking fishy. Yeah, then yeah, it empties it. Wait a minute. Fine. So fine. Okay, let's create a proper script. I'm pissed off by this and it crashed. It's gonna be just like that. Script. File, new script. It's going to be inheriting from node. That is all fine. Template on scripts. Uh, Call it horizontal threshold image texture script for that. You are so that you are going to do image called image. Not the script. This gets in here. Open this. It's not going to run until we actually trigger the engine. Sometimes there's this notification. Notify the authorities. Now let's keep an eye on here. Let's go to the slider. Eye on here. Slider. Texture. We don't want that. We are going to accomplish this texture when we replace that white dark shader. This is going to be our image texture. We already have one. It's here. Just white. It actually recognizes the width and height. All good. Wait a minute. Okay, this is still part of the style looks. Yeah, that makes sense. Sense. But where is the script? Or more like script even running. Try to run this in script inherits from native type node. Can't be instanced in object of type text. What if you do it this way? Already trying to run. I'm an image texture. That's now it's running. We don't have the visual feedback here. I think we could get away. There you go. Not texture. Our real task is to make this guy to look more like the shader script doing some here. How do you do draw color here? Actually has a property, right? Aren't you the image property? Yeah, image texture won't actually have. Imagine when you're ready to notify. Something doesn't quite look right here. How come I'm getting the storage property exposed? You can have compressed, lossy, lossless right here. Assign one of these three to this. Image property is not exposed. Because we just decide to create an image texture and assign image in the code instead this way. To identify images in there. No fucking kidding. I want to read that. Get property list. Attempt in base null instance. Now you think you don't exist. Why is this so difficult? Why can't we assign shader code to texture rect is fine. Aha. Okay, so I think I have a very interesting suggestion. What if what if solution is actually funny and stupid? Create our texture rect with any shader code we want to write. I'm confident we may even stick panel around it, whatever. Then the slider component will be so that its track will be invisible. We will only have its grabber shown, position accordingly, so it's going to look like it's actually hanging over or out. They are basically going to be superimposed, superpositioned. So then it's going to look like we are designing one component, but essentially we have one component that we see through, and through that component we see texture rect. It's just going to look like this slider is basically going over its content area. And no one really needs to know how it's done except you now know because I revealed the plan. But let's get on with it. Because it turned out to be impossible to assign as this texture an image texture and then change its shader because it doesn't accept shader code. So first thing first, make the sliders slidey part empty style box. Oh, don't tell me this is. You removed all this shit, of course. Yeah, this actually had some parts here. Okay, done. Good. Now the slider is basically invisible except its ticks and its grabber part. Otherwise, it's. We are not going to use a vertical thing. We are going to use. We will want things to sit on top of each other. And for that, what do we use? We use basic control so everything kind of overlaps each other. Change the type to basic control. Slider, this most likely have its own position, so cancel that. Hold this up. Now the slider is there. Getting there. Push things around, that's fine. Slider still looks fun. Anyway, I think that's the dimension. So I'm still assuming you are watching stream Mega Asmodi. I'll just remove those ticks for now. I'll re-enable them to check the. Yep, you're here. Cool. I may have asked, are you from North America, Europe? Just curious to know the time zone of viewers because I still don't know the best hours to stream. More or less, like my own convenience. Would be nice to have more viewers. Then 8 p.m. You are from Ukraine. Cool. Yeah, my parents live in Turkey. It's 8 p.m. over there. I have a certain time window in the morning. I get to talk to them, and beyond a certain hour, it gets late. So I'm familiar with your time zone. Okay, so then let's write that shader. We have the half of it done. Half of it is literally done. Um, we have this line here. Then we have the top part. Now, funny thing is, the next challenge is this. We have done so far only either the top part as one straightforward gradient, or we do the bottom gradient with two breakpoints. We have not written in the same shader two gradients and divide them by something. That is a challenge. And to be honest, I kind of don't know, but I have to figure out, and I think I have an idea how to accomplish it. So for this texture rect, we now go into its shader code. I think this shader code is going to change. It's going to this guy. Good. So we already know this is doing. Oh, I'm still running the code, which is interfering. Yeah, this is doing the job. Some um, but let's remember, the developer would ideally want to set this stuff here at a higher. This has to propagate down to this component's shader parameters. So we kind of did that kind of taking some stuff from this level and propagating down to this level. We did that part. Um, let's assume we are going to do that at some point, but let's also give anyone a chance to come here and manually adjust them anyway. So we need to introduce two more colors here. We will actually need to introduce those two colors when the time comes to propagate those colors down here. So we will have two more blocks of colors. Let's separate these from the top ones. So we will call them as indicator color 1, indicator color 2. The bottom part is basically the threshold color 2. In most cases, it's going to be the same green and red, but maybe there will be a different threshold sort of logic, different colors to compare against. This is the threshold part. Let's write a comment here. Threshold parts. I mean, it's going to be straightforward anyway when you're actually going. Obviously, it's going to say threshold color 1 to 2. This has to be done this way, this way. And that's done. You're all black because we did not set you to this color to. So 1/3 of the job is done. This is working fine. Now, if you write another part that is showing only this part from here to here, we could make that work too. Let's write that too. That is going to be indicator parts. Indicator colors. Going to be indicated right here. right here. There is no offset. This is going all the way to the end. This instead of this. This is the straightforward grid. And now we have to, they are not exactly half. This is like 60%, line 40%. Let's assume they're half. We want to render half of this area. It's light blue to darker blue, and the bottom half with the threshold color. And I suppose we need to do that with if we do it like this is the gradient code. What if we actually do it this way? Mix from indicator color to threshold color. Do it like half the way. Kind of mix them, overlay them. Where's the UV coming into play? Now I remember writing something like this. If UVX is less than half, then color is indicator color. This is your problem. Oh, you are not script. You have indicator color. Else, you are threshold color. Problem though, this is still going to do it in kind of want to do this in why am I doing it over X? That's it. I think there is a much more performant way of writing this. We know this works. Let's smarten up. We know that works. What if y set? What is the offset? Let's do 1. That's still a smooth transition. We want abrupt. Let's do like what, 50%? There's some other step function. Step. Float, float. Let's go to the smooth step right. That's it, right? Because I was talking about this. Patients get you about that step. You have 2 types of steps, or maybe multiple signatures. It's either float here and then vector types, or vector 2, 3, 4. if b I less than a, in our case, I think this is going to be our half point. Type UVY. If UVY is less than 50%, this might kind of work. Either do or don't. Float. Is giving you float for vector typing. What does mix get? Float. In this case, it could also get vector. What would be getting in this case? Smooth step. I see. Feel like this is gonna do it, but I have to be careful about what I'm typing. I may make myself believe that I'm not successful, but they're close. What if this is 0.5? This is my UVY. This is replacing, this comment is out. Instead of smooth stepping, we just say until 05. That's it. This is the thing. Until 05, when Y values are okay, less than 0.5, this is basically giving us a true case-ish. Well, this is giving you a vector. The fact that it's giving it is because this is less than 0.5, which is so only then will you mix these two. And if you don't mix it, then the rest is just the other color. I made a terrible explanation. But under normal cases, when you want to mix two colors, you bring into the equation some kind of interpolation. Here we basically say we don't want to really mix them. It's as if half the way we kind of mix them the way that there is no color to. Lower half, we just say when we mix them, we don't want to take any of the color one. So then only each one shows itself in appropriate Y positions, and that cutoff point is here. That's really what it is. Just basically doing the same job that this one is doing. Yeah, because if it's less than this, it's this. It's less more than this, which is actually good. So where is the line? Where is the line indeed? How do you draw a simple line in because we are aware of the fact that there's an invisible for loop above all this, doing it for all x and y's. We want to draw a line so that for all the x's, for a certain period of y, it draws a certain color. It's as if there's a sweet spot here. Say like 59% this, just 1% that's gray color in between, and then the remaining 40% is the bottom. Somewhere here we have to Like that. You're doing all this hard work, suddenly drawing that line seems more intimidating. It's that little guy you gotta be afraid of. Let's pretend we fixed the problem. That will actually need a color. Real problem doesn't exist. Here's a divider color. By default, it's black. Next task is when we do this, it's basically overwriting whatever we have. Going to do it all white. Okay. Let's pretend let's just draw when we do the divided color here, that so that when you change this to anything that is that, but we want to draw this only at a certain Y position. Mix. What if you just mix it with white? Just white, just the divider color, so that does. This is actually mixing it 60%. So it's actually mixing white and black 60%. Well, this is actually reddish, but if this was it. So okay, we don't want this. We want okay. Again, the dump code. Here comes the dump code. If UVY is 60%, and of course, what is happening? The dumbest code first. UVY is 60%. But I'm hoping that when it's 60%, there's enough on the screen to see that line of color. Let's just do it like this. I don't really know. It's more than 60%. So yeah, that's it. You need a bit of range there. And UVY is less than what's 1? It's 61%. So maybe that's too little. That's it. And even that is arbitrary, right? Because 60% of what is the height? 12 pixel. We are not essentially giving the pixel value. I think the line has to be some kind of percentage. How do you correlate the pixel to? I suppose the best way is this: if you want 1 pixel out of 12 pixels, then you are basically saying, well, your 12 pixels is your 100, and it's basically 1 over 12 and then multiplied by 100, and then range calculation equal. Step by step, we are getting there. Let's see if we can actually do that pixel value. It might be overkill, but I feel anal today, so going to be an integer, an unsigned integer, divider width. Width is going to imply that there is some width. Height is going to apply thickness. I don't think this needs hint. It's already hinted enough. By default, it's 1. Because maybe we will actually have 0. Fine too. So this, we know this is not essentially 1 pixel, because we now see that if this is 12 pixels, this is sort of less than a pixel, to be honest. Let's do the part here and then we'll smarten it up. So thickness, interesting though. How am I going to know height of this? Ideally, I don't want to type 12 either. Shader parameters. When people write outline shaders, they often ask for thickness, say 1 or 2. What does it even mean? Is it some arbitrary visual thing that you see, oh, 1 is the minimum? Is it really 1 pixel? Godot outline. We'll find something. But size size X and Y. I remember seeing once that I should. Size, it's some kind of percentage, not absolutely. My size is yeah, see, it's adding some kind of percentage, or we are already doing that. Outline width staying unchanged by camera distance. See, that is essentially And with this, the trick is this is not exactly our the solution to our problem. Trick that is used here. It knows how far the camera is to the object. As the camera is going far, you're essentially increasing the contribution of that outline. So you're compensating for the fact that the object is getting small, but the outline is actually. Um, but I don't think it actually still involves with. uh, Um, check this out quickly. See the code. He's just working out the tune shader. Bro, but I don't really get to see the code for it. It's about the custom processing, which I really need to investigate right now. This looks similar to the code we just saw, which actually had the thickness edit here. Screen size, screen pixel size, all that stuff. Cool. Not useful. Outline shader, line thickness, controllable width and color. Line color, line thickness. Ah, scaling the sprite scales its pixels on the screen. It will also scale the stroke. Yeah, we don't want that. Instead, picture pixel size, line thickness. The line thickness is given in terms of pixels. This is where the whole magic of the offsetting happens. But essentially, this size is what we are going to check off. Eyes, left and right, so that we are shifting it to left, right, up and down. And we are just adding that. Okay, we use this information. That was actually size. It's not color. So imagine we have that. Thing that needs to be float, right? Could do the hint as Zipper. I wish it broke the hint. There is no hint int. Maybe we'll do some kind of range. I don't know. Int range. We'll do it from 0 to 5. 1. Hold is 1. At least it'll be like this. Size is now size. Still has no impact here. However, size is a vector too. Which is interesting because I want to do something silly. What if instead of comparing the UVY, we compare UV to size, because size is a vector too and so is UV. What happens? Invalid arguments to operator. It is not that smart. It doesn't compare vector 2 to vector 2. Suppose this is what you can do. Interesting. So it actually keeps the width. This is actually good because it keeps the pixel size. So in essence, if this is actually capped by 12, which is the height of this component, 6 is going to be why is 9 here? Why is this acting like it? Oh, not even that actually. Curious how far this goes. 2. Why 19? This fill and this is not. This is 22, which is scary. Slider. We're only interested in this. I want stuff to make sense. Why is it 10? Sort of in the middle. Will 9.5 work better? Except it doesn't. What am I doing? 9.5. That's literally the middle. 19. Why are you 19? Oh, why indeed? Let's just arbitrarily set this to 2. $30. Why is this still staying in the middle? Why are you acting like? Why is 19 always? We have something going on here. Things 19%, 19 pixel thickness is like the 100. What is actually this? Fragments. Okay. See the whole code. It's just creating. This is the part. Okay. Some emergency messages to take care of. I'm still thinking, why is 19 such an important number? Why? Stupid as it sounds, 19 times 5 is almost 100%. High five. Similarly, why is the 100%? A half is such an odd number. This made sense when, well, kind of made sense. I thought this was really 1 pixel out of. But as you increase this and you get close to what? 30 pixels? This doesn't really. Maybe I'm doing something here. If the y is whatever this size is, taking into because this has an x and y. It's just a scalar matrix basically multiplying x and y by the same value. Then the y value is I suppose this is still checking against. For us, this means pixels, but they're still. Yeah, because this is not converted into percentages. This is the percent. It's like this still has to take into account possible area. Sure. Kind of know what's going on there. Size. Texture. Whatever texture this is. Screen texture. Read it from. What do you really need? Texture size. Let's read this part. With the size of a 2D LOD. This level of detail. This gives you what invalid arguments for built-in function. This is actually giving here is okay. So we read sampler 2D from screen texture and here's the UV. That should give us the colors. Yet you do not accept it into sampler. That actually is going to be plus. So this should actually have a y coordinate. This y coordinate might be the one that we plot an int. The int it's an integer vector. Just convert this to float. How do we do convert? Float I see it's I wrote it the C# way. This. It happened, but of course now I'm never taking into this size. Okay, I think this has to be divided over this. Here we can actually that's also go to vector, a vector. You are saying you cannot really do integer vector. How about you convert? And we do the size y here. Too many brackets. Yeah, thing is happening. But what? We just need a reliable way to draw a line and then put it right over those two. I think the logic that I have here, maybe I constructed it a bit. So what did I say? Basically, the UV space in the Y is giving the height of this component, not in exact terms, but we know that whatever this value is, UV Y is going to go from 0 to 1. The values between 0 and 1 are basically mapped to an area that is 30 pixels tall. This texture pixel size, I believe it's giving, if I recall, this is also giving it in terms of not this, but in the 0, 1 space. Somewhere. Yeah. Say here. Or reading it here. Okay. Normalized pixel size of default 2D text. For a sprite that actually has a texture size of 64 by 32 pixels, this is actually giving you a vector that is 1 over 64, 1 over 30. So that when the for loop is running, the for loop, at each iteration, you are basically reading 60 times for 32. Sorry, what was it? So you are basically running two for loops, one 64 times, the other one 32 times. Hence, at each point, these are sort of like moving to the next. It's the way to imagine them. So you are covering the whole surface of it. Why is that? Because one of those fractions, imagine 1 over 30 is one of those. So then we need this. This. Let's see, size. I think I'm gonna have to think about this a bit more. It's 2 o'clock. Gotta take a break, few business calls, and yeah, there will be an afternoon to get back to this because we have something really cool going on here. This is just a roadblock. Usually, at a time like this, when I feel sort of this is going to be counterproductive to try things about this, I need to. So I'll see you in the afternoon. See you soon.